Hello and welcome to International Women's Month, Talk with Inspiring Women. And today we have Dame Stephanie Shirley, who is a companion of honour and known as Steve. In 1962, Dame Stephanie started Freelance Programmers, which ended up having a valuation of $3 billion. She is also an author of a book, Let It Go. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you for inviting me.
When we were chatting just now before the camera rolled, we were talking about how much that sort of sense of I hate the word glass ceiling, Steve, but how much, and you've had a bit longer than me to see that challenge from what the challenges were in the 60s for you of getting women into the workplace compared to what they are today. So just to give us a sense of that.
I think in the 60s, there were legal constraints on what we were doing.
Yeah.
And the culture and the atmosphere and the lack of consideration of women as full-blown human beings was endemic. It was really very bad. And you had to learn to wheedle your way through a little bit of charm, a little bit of make you sure you're very, very professional. But now, I think that today's women have a much more difficult fight against cultural difficulties.
In a way, I think what you're saying, though, is then it was very black and white. You know, women weren't allowed to have a bank account without their husband's permission. They were kind of really basic, like some countries you couldn't vote. But now it's more nuanced, exactly.
Yes.
There's more subtle choices, which can make it emotionally harder.
But it's equally hard.
When you started in 1962, what qualifications did you have to enable you to feel you had the confidence? When you started, what were the things which you felt, I trust in myself, I have utmost knowledge, confidence in, and what was stuff you had to kind of bluff your way through?
Well, I had to bluff my way through quite a lot because I really was not qualified to start a business at all. I was clever technically. I worked very hard.
Had you been to university?
No.
You hadn't?
I was taking a degree at evening classes.
Okay. And what was your degree in?
Mathematics.
If you think back to your early 20s, do you remember being an ambitious career woman?
Oh, yes.
You do?
I was coming across the glass ceiling, and it was like a concrete ceiling in those days, to such an extent with different pay scales for men and women. And I was blocked in promotions because people wouldn't sit on my interview boards because they just didn't believe in appointing any woman to a management position. And it really, it was a sort of rather negative drive into business. I was sick and tired of this sexism. And I decided to start up a company, an organization that was places I wanted to work with, where it was family friendly, where it was
flexible for women.
Flexible.
But you are the first, most pioneering person to say women should be able to have a flexible way in which they work.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think nobody had done that before you.
Not at all. I thought I was the first in the world, but to my annoyance, I discovered that there was a company in the States called Computations Inc. that 5 years before me had started a very comparable organization, though it never got big.
Well, all right.
She wasn't ambitious.
All right. So of the first ambitious and truly big success,
corporate,
you were the first.
Yes.
All right. So in that space where you're sort of writing the mandate of how you wish this organization, this company to be, how easy was it for you to find these women?
Oh, everybody thinks that's the difficult part. As soon as we started, we were inundated with applications, and you have the tiniest mention in a local paper or in the doctor's surgery or in the library, which is how we've recruited. And women would come forward. I've got 5 years experience. Can I come and join you? I've got 3 years experience. I designed such and something. Can I come and join you? We've just had a 60-year reunion from the company's start. And 88 people turned up.
Amazing. Incredible.
Still feeling part of the family.
Incredible.
Because there was something that women, we got from each other. We supported each other. We backed each other up. We were determined to be the most professional you could possibly be, so nobody could fault us on our performance.
So you had to be doubly as good. There was that
Oh, it's
sense
always
then
the
you had to be
case.
doubly as
Always
good
the
for not
case,
to have
yes.
any criticism. When did you first feel, I have a successful business?
When I was about your age.
So you started in 62, so I'm not going to go into the details. And did you have a board?
Company. Oh, yes.
Oh, and on that board, did you also then have a C-suite?
No, we didn't talk about that in those
Okay,
days,
so you
no.
had a board that was people who were not a part of the company. Did you have investors?
No.
You didn't. So you self-funded
Yeah.
from day one.
And that made a big difference, of course,
Yeah.
to the company.
Because then you controlled.
You control, but also you're short of cash.
Yes.
Desperately short of
Yes.
cash all the time.
Did you ever feel a time when you thought, I'm no longer short of cash? Because you did give a lot of your money away for philanthropy. So there must be a stage, Steve, where you felt it's earning money.
I think the stage comes quite late. And it's really when you find you ladder your tights and it doesn't matter, you've got another pair. Mm-hmm. So it's quite late. We're
So you're not
such a
worrying.
time, not worrying about money.
How
all
will
the
I get
time.
them? Yeah. So that time for you, do you remember how old you were when you had that time of, like, did you ever think I need a new car and you didn't spend
Oh,
weeks
no, we were much
thinking?
later. We also had a learning disabled child who was autistic. So it was very expensive and made a big difference to our lives. But the way in which people react to wealth at whatever level, some people change their lifestyle because they know they can. They still find that they are worried about money because now they're worried about can they afford a better yacht, not a better car. But, you know, the whole thing gets
The
out of
parameters
hand.
just change, but it's
And
still that worry.
because we had a learning disabled child, in order to keep some family life going properly, we didn't do that, and we stayed much the same as, you know, somewhat better carpet, better sofa, but, you know, that's it.
When you were still fully running the company and it was at its most successful, when was that time? And what did it look like? How many people were in the business?
Probably about 300. I was still doing day-to-day marketing. I was thoroughly enjoying the odd bit of technology that I was still doing. I was beginning to lose contact, beginning to lose control of the technology, but beginning to also afford to employ other people to do it for me, and starting to enjoy that because, I mean, to me, work is something that I really do enjoy. I'm a workaholic. It's not just something I do when I'd rather be doing something else. I love it. And when you start having to delegate the interesting bits, not just the bits you don't like, but the interesting bits, you think, well, what am I doing this? It was much more fun 3 years ago.
Yeah, God, I so identify with that. I mean, it's a very tough one, that, as an entrepreneur.
But you have to make that decision.
You do have to, because that delegation and that employing people who are better at you in a specific department.
Surround yourself with people who
is the best way to grow a successful business. But I spend more time on how does the marketing strategy work its way into the business strategy.
That is appropriate.
Which is appropriate.
Because only you can see it.
Only I can see it. But I
vision.
identify what you mean, and you start something where 100% of what you do is great, then 90%, and then it's sort of 50% is you are the CEO, so that has to be done. And then you're left with the 50% of the exciting new innovation. What are we doing next? Drive and energy of the business, which I still think always the CEO should have.
One of the things I did was start working internationally and leaving my general manager to run the UK
business.
And it was an attempt to grow her, because we were predominantly female. We had a few men by that time. In 1975, equal opportunities legislation came in, and we had to employ men. So we started
so you were the other
recruiting.
way round.
We were the other way around.
I
It was
love that.
ironic.
I love it. For most people, it's like, I have to get a few women, and you were like, oh my goodness, like I forgot the men. So I think we'll talk now a little bit about, because I say I'm going to say the phrase giving back, but I think from 1962 you were giving back because you were giving opportunities to women in the workforce. But at what stage, building this business, did you think, I want to do things in a more philanthropic way in other areas?
Well, I've always been a giver. Looking through my old stuff at the age of 8, I was together with a friend next door running a little theatre group, the age of 8, on behalf of the Red Cross.
Okay.
So I really started fairly early
Yeah.
on. And I think I was taught that, if you have something, you have to share it and so on. But I find that the wealth that I've made, of which I'm very proud, but the most pleasure it brings is from that which I give away. Mm-hmm. And that started pretty early on. I gave away a quarter of the company to the staff.
What was your first board seat of another company?
It was of a charity, Help the Aged, now Age UK. So it was quite big.
Yeah.
It was a national organisation where we solemnly put a florin, 2 shillings, into a kitty to pay for our sandwiches at lunch, because board members should not ever have any benefit at all. I thought that was absolutely lovely.
I think that's fantastic, yeah.
But the first one was AEA Technology, which was the Atomic Energy Authority, privatised. I had a wonderful experience of being with the board as it privatised out of government.
Were you the only female member on the board?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I am used to
to
it.
So when you went to that first board meeting and before then, in a way, you had been, running a business predominantly female with your ideas leading that company, and then you go and somebody asks you to be on the board of something which is only men and you're the only woman. What tone of voice did you have in those board meetings? How much of a loud voice did you feel you could have on that board?
I wasn't unhappy with that at the time. And I wonder why. I think I was already so experienced that I knew what I had to say was of interest.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference was in my own company, I had the responsibility of driving through my ideas, which is the really difficult bit.
Yeah.
Whereas on a board and as a non-executive, you could have ideas and have you thought of so-and-so and have you thought of so-and-so. And you don't
have to see the execution. There's something, there's something incredibly joyful, but there's also something that I've spoken to a few entrepreneurs.
It's quite prestigious. It pays very well.
Yeah.
And it's extremely interesting.
Yeah. And you learn a lot about different industries.
Yes.
But then...
And I went on an American board.
Yeah.
That was different again.
Yes.
And
which
again,
American board? What was it? The
Tandem
company?
computer
Okay.
board.
Yeah.
So I stayed within my own sector
Yeah.
as a scientist.
And how was that different to be in America? Did you feel America was ahead of the game in terms of feet of women?
Yes.
And what was what did you immediately understand to be different?
I think the widespread, the get up and go of America, everybody's future is in their own hands. And that applied equally to women.
But do you feel, going back to your philanthropy, so you get to a stage, you have a very successful business. I mean, I'm sure every day there is stress. But when you say the first thing you did was you gave 25% of your business to the people
It took
who
me
were
11
involved,
years to do that.
because you didn't have the ability financially until that stage. So once you did that, and then the business is still growing, because I have read that you gave away the majority of your wealth to philanthropic ventures.
Yes. Yeah.
So after you did that, what was the next thing that you felt I want to give? And also, had you paid yourself huge dividends? Had you sold a bit of the business? What enabled you to do that, Steve?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I start things. If I see something that needs doing, I do it. And what needed doing in my life was to provide a future for my autistic son. He was in an asylum for 13 years and I wanted him out. So I set up an arrangement where I could look after him again ourselves, but this time with paid help. So that took us some time to do that. And then we had 2, and then we had 3 people, and then we could turn it into a charity. So that's how my first charity started, to meet my own wishes. And this is what good marketing is always about, isn't it? We know that there's a need because we feel this.
Yeah. So did that become a home for autistic children that your son stayed in, or did that become a charity and your son stayed at home with help at home?
No, it became a charity and he stayed in the charity.
He stayed in the home,
charity,
but it was
yes.
one that you then had started.
I started, and for a long time I chaired it.
Yeah.
But starting a charity is very like starting a business. You know, you start off with what sort of quorum are we going to have, what is our mission, what is our... to a certain extent, the only difference is that the metrics are social rather than financial. So I found that running charity, again, when it was small, was highly enjoyable. But again, my dream was always to get it to the stage where it is
Autonomous,
independent of me financially, managerially, and emotionally.
Yeah. And very hard to do the emotional part when your son was there.
The fact that he had such a poor quality of life, despite everything that we tried to do for him, meant that I've really focused my wealth on autism. So I've set up a school for autism. I mean, my first charity looks after 300 people now.
Amazing.
And does diagnostics across 5 counties of England. The school employs 600 people to look after 100 pupils, and is educating them to a wonderful degree of success that one can realistically think of them doing small jobs, market gardening, animal husbandry, cleaning the vegetables in the kitchen, making bread. They've started an artisan bakery so that the older pupils can learn properly how to bake bread. So when they go out for jobs, they can sort of say, well, I've worked in a bakery 1 day a week for 6 weeks. And we're getting wonderful results. It's the most happy place. I love going there.
Yeah.
Again, I glow with pride when I see what's going on.
Yeah.
Children doing quite, to you, basic things, but I know is a real achievement for that child.
Yeah. That must give so much back to you as
lovely.
Well, and not to have your son anymore, to see.
Well, this is
it
the
can
school
get
that
to.
I would have liked for him.
Yes. Yeah, but it took
Intellectually.
a while. Yeah.
From the sport point of view, they have a running round and running track round the grounds. It's a 55-acre site. I'm really very, very proud of that. But I shouldn't say this, but it is my favourite charity. But the most strategic one is a medical research charity. And that's quite small, 24 people. But it's having an enormous impact.
On what kind of medical research?
Autism.
To look at actually how one
What
can.
it is,
Yeah.
why it overlaps with epilepsy, why people with autism die younger than people without autism, why autistic women die before autistic men, which is something what's going on there. We just don't understand what is going on.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of that. It's really making a big difference.
So before this, there was really not much research in England.
There was no
around it.
research. There was some in the universities, some funded by government, but pathetically little, really. And Autistica is the largest autism research charity in Europe, and that doesn't say as much as it sounds because there are so few other charities.
Yeah.
So it's a niche that I understand, which I initially was able to contribute to, and now, of course, I just figurehead it.
And it funds itself.
It funds itself.
And it raises money itself.
Yeah.
That's an incredible achievement.
Pleased with it.
What do you think your biggest achievement feels to you?
Oddly enough, taking the company into co-ownership, that was quite a struggle.
Yeah.
And it made such a difference, and I feel so good about it.
And how did you navigate to co-ownership? So when you say co-ownership, you're saying that the team were partly owning the business.
Everybody was partly owning the business.
So everybody partly owned. So, but you gave 25% of it to that co-ownership. Yes. So how was that difficult to navigate in that regard? So when you came up with the idea that they should, what prompted you? Was it sitting on the board of John Lewis? Because I feel
no, certainly I was
earlier than that.
It was triggered by John Lewis, whom I'd always admired And just the whole concept of the cooperative movement appeals to my sort of mind.
Yeah.
I do believe in sharing.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to share my company to everyone's benefit.
What do you think your biggest legacy is?
I think it is the inspiration for women. I've done a lot for autism, but I think the inspiration for women is my biggest legacy.
I think that pioneering of...
Because I was so early.
You were the earliest.
Yeah.
And we'll forget about the company in America because I don't even know their name. But to have that concept at that time when...
And we were working from home.
And you're working
which is
from
now
home.
considered quite fashionable.
What I find most interesting is to think about that when there were so many black and white things not happening, like you couldn't own a bank account and things like that. And you're thinking 300 steps ahead of that, even though those things haven't changed, it's about the production of
It
your
can be
work.
dangerous if you're always wanting to do new things because they're new.
It can be, but I think
On the other hand, a business has to do new things. If it doesn't innovate, it is dead.
But I think the pioneering thing to me is that you saw the value of somebody's contribution didn't have to be by going to an office 9 to 5 and not having a baby and not being married and not being this and having to be a single man. That a woman could give exactly the same contribution to a business, and she just could do that even better if there was flexibility in how she was doing it.
I was very much driven by my own needs and by the needs of other women, that they needed flexible working, flexible in time, flexible in location, and it wasn't a sort of an academic thing that I thought about. It's just how can we go on working?
Yeah. And then
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're an entrepreneur, which means you're a starter, but are you a finisher?
I'm a gutsy person. It will be done, and it will be done well. Not necessarily by me, but it will happen. I'm not sure that I'm a finisher. I
I
like
feel
to do new things,
I feel that you're like, what's there?
What's
What's there?
Yeah.
What's the thing you've been most scared of in your life?
It used to be public speaking, but I've sort of mastered that. I do a lot of it now.
Yeah. I mean, I saw you on the TED Talks and a few other talks I was watching on YouTube, and you seemed like they were in the palm of your hand. You did, because you knew how to take a breath and refer to notes as if your notes weren't even there. And I could sense when you were doing that TED Talks, there were things you wanted to remind yourself of, but it felt that you never lost that relationship ever with your audience.
Well, I'm glad that's how it came over, sort of inside.
Yeah, but that's how it came over. It was fantastic. So you've been a bit, but anything else you've been really like, I was scared, but so that is like, I was
I
scared,
think the money
but I did
scares
it.
me, and the money men scared me.
The money scared you in what way?
I thought they would ruin the company.
Oh, the money men.
The money men.
I love it that you call them the money men.
Well, normally you would take on a finance director about 5 years into a company, something like that. It was 25 years before I had a finance director. So we kept things very simple.
Yeah.
We ran things on a cash basis.
Yeah, you had an accountant.
We had an accountant, obviously.
Okay. And I'm just checking here when you said you didn't like, so you just didn't have a chief financial officer kind of thing.
Not at all. And we didn't have those skills in anybody else either.
So when he came in, was it a man or woman?
Man.
Okay. When he came in, did he go, oh my God, what's under the bonnet? Or was it actually better than you thought how it had been going?
I think he was quite amazed how hard we made money work, which is one measures that he's interested in.
Yeah, they love those measures.
Because we were doing pretty well on very little.
Mm-hmm. What happened to the company in the end?
It was taken over.
It was taken over.
How was it taken over? 3 acquisitions, which were a bit sort of indigestible, and that weakened it.
Yeah.
And it was taken over by Sopra Steria, which is also partly owned by the staff.
Yeah.
So it was very culturally aligned.
Yeah.
And there's just some remnants of contact with them today.
And when it was taken over, did you then leave the company?
Oh, I left at 60.
You did. When you left at 60, did you get a payout? Did you sell the company?
When I was company was taken over, 150 million came to me.
You sell the business, you get 150 million.
Yeah.
What do you do with it?
Well, I give it to somebody else to invest.
All right.
So I'm not
like
interested.
a bank?
Well, merchant bank.
A merchant bank, yeah.
Yes. So
all right.
they invest it for me. I don't find money terribly interesting. I don't want to be watching the share prices
so
every
you
day.
just get a return on it per year.
Yes.
And you live off the return. And you
Well, no,
donate on the return.
I donate capital. So the capital is down. I'm not worth 150 today.
Yeah.
Lost some in the dot-com bubble.
Yeah.
Didn't really seem real to me because it was all paper money. It wasn't.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed using money for social ends.
I know women who have done a raise of their business, and I know women who've sold their business in their entirety, and I know women who've sold their business and had a percentage in the new company and got an amount and then had a buyout.
Yeah.
All right, so you did clean buyout. So there is that sense, and it depends how old you are, because I think if you're sort of 60, you have different thoughts than if you're 25, because we can see the dot-com mad people.
And I think on the family situation.
Exactly, and what family, everything.
Follow.
So, and you don't really, I don't think you're money driven in any way, because I can tell that from the beginning of our conversation, but it's a means to an end of what you can have the freedom to do with it, which is exciting for you, which is what, for me, I'd love to get to. So that's why I'm interested, because if ever I did really well and I had that kind of money, all right.
But everybody has something to give, and you have ideas and energy. And, just to serve on a major charity, you might find quite interesting as a learning situation.
I want to start one. What was the first thing that you gave money to when you had that money sitting in the bank?
I tell the story against myself. I have a friend, and who worked with me in the States and lived in Bermuda. Mm-hmm. And I went to Bermuda a couple of times just to stay with hers. And she got involved in a school debating society.
Yeah.
And because I knew her, and she was financially oriented, actually. And so I knew that the money would be well spent. And I knew it would be not go into her pocket. That was the first gift that I made, donation that I made to a debating society in Bermuda.
And that was because the woman who was helping to raise money for it.
She gave me confidence.
She
asked.
She's fantastic.
And she asked.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you found that when you've decided to give money away, you prefer to give it to something much smaller where you feel your money goes further?
I prefer to give it at start.
At start.
Yeah.
I just want to chat for a little bit about your book. So why did you decide to write one? And what is Let It Go about?
It is a memoir, very different to an autobiography in that it's less factual. Well, it's still factual, but it's more concerned with emotions, feelings, relationships, rather than on Thursday afternoon it was raining and I went to 10 Downing Street. Mm-hmm. It took me 18 months to write, and I dictated it and sent the tapes to my co-author, Richard Asquith, who was previously a journalist. I chose him because he was the only journalist that ever understood why I should be selling shares at the bottom of the market. But he did understand why, and so I thought he would appreciate what I was trying to do. The book really is part of this inspiration. I've done so many things that get lost or forgotten. I'd like to put a permanent record down. Mm-hmm. People ask me, did I find it therapeutic? Mm-hmm. I don't think I did. I'm a very dutiful person. Mm-hmm. I thought it needed writing, and so I did it. And I'm very glad now I do, because I use it for reference.
Fantastic. When you can't remember, you go back to the book. When you had to really forcibly remember everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Was there any organisation or company that you gave your money to and then you thought, I wish I hadn't?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so tell me one or two of them.
Well, I tried a couple of times to invest in computer companies, because this is the field that I know, and I know a lot of people around, and people came up with their technical ideas. A couple of them I thought were very good, so I invested in them, and only to have it disappear without trace. So I'm not a sort of an investor. It's just not my scene. I'm a doer.
Okay, you're a doer. So therefore, impactful donation is more relevant to you than
when things start up, I know I can do a
risk
lot,
taking.
Yeah,
but there's also that difference between, so .com is an investment that can go bang or bust, whereas the debating society in Bermuda
will still be there.
And they say something about that too, which is more appealing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I used to think my company was my long-term legacy, but in fact it's the school, I think, that will be there in 100 years' time.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's those things that whatever happens, stay around to try and help other people. Yeah. How can we best support other women?
Well, I think we can share techniques that we've learnt to get round, get through, get over discrimination. I think we can share a lot more and support each other much more. Sisterhood is now considered a very old-fashioned term, but I still believe that is a way forward for women.
Sisterhood. It's the old-fashioned sense of sisterhood too. It's about, I found very interesting a stat that in business last year, 2% of female founders were invested in. I mean, worse than coal mining, all right? And then the other stat is that 20% of VCs have women, but 2% were invested in. So there's a bit of a gap there of 16% of females who decided not to. So I totally agree with you with that sense of sisterhood and how important it is, and not to think that it doesn't matter anymore, that it's equally as important to you. Such a pleasure talking to you.
It's
and
been
so
very fun.
Inspiring. I just want to say, for those of you, we will leave all the information on, if you are watching this and your child has autism, we will leave all the information on the charity and all the work that you are doing in research as well. And I found that I'm already thinking of 100 different things I hadn't been thinking about before this conversation. Let's give it up for Dame Stephanie.
Thank you very much.